Welcome to Aspire, and I Have the Right to podcast, where we amplify voices, share stories, and drive change in the fight against sexual assault. We explore the critical issues surrounding student safety, institutional accountability, and survivor empowerment. In every episode, our goal is to provide insightful conversations with survivors, experts, educators, and advocates, giving you, our listener, valuable information, resources, and actionable steps to create safer environments and cultivate a culture of respect and consent. Welcome back to the Aspire podcast. I'm Katie Shipp, Executive Director of I Have the Right To, and I'm here with my co-host and our co-founder, Chessy Prout. Aspire was created by the nonprofit I Have the Right To as a space for honest, meaningful conversations about survivor advocacy, prevention, and what it truly takes to create safer communities. If these conversations resonate with you and you're interested in bringing them into your school or community, we'd love to connect. I Have the Right To partners with K-12 schools, colleges, and universities to provide age-appropriate programming for students, educators, and parents on consent, healthy relationships, digital safety, leadership, and more, helping turn these conversations into action. You can reach us at takeaction@ihavetherightto.org. Before we jump into our conversation with today's guest, I want to take a moment to introduce our guest co-host, Maria. Maria is I Have the Right To's Communication Director. She leads the organization's social media presence and marketing strategies. Maria holds a law degree and a master's degree in intellectual property law. Alongside her legal and advocacy work, Maria discovered a love for graphic design and marketing. She is now dedicated to amplifying the organization's message.
And today we're so excited to be joined by Ashley-Lauren Elrod. She's a multi-assault survivor turned Emmy-nominated producer, storyteller, and the founder of Visionary Woman Productions and the Maya's Magic Word Project. She's also a board-certified mental health coordinator and a nationally recognized survivor advocacy leader who has worked alongside organizations supporting survivors of abuse and trafficking. Through her work in film, media, advocacy, and education, Ashley-Lauren is building a child empowerment platform designed to help shape a new world of prevention and safety for our society, bridging all gaps of big, difficult conversations into trauma-informed, non-fear-based language that makes empowerment and prevention easier to discuss and an everyday part of life, including her groundbreaking project, the children's book, Maya's Magic Word. Her voice is bold, deeply informed, and rooted in both lived experience and legacy-level impact. Today, she joins us to share her story, her mission, and the urgent work of protecting and empowering the next generation. Ashley-Lauren, welcome to Aspire.
Yeah, thank you all so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
We are so happy to have this conversation with you today. And so to jump off, I'd love for you to share what first inspired you to use storytelling as a tool for healing and advocacy.
Yes. So being a creative and also just being a survivor who honestly survived because of the arts, being creative, acting, singing, dancing, those are the things that helped me stay as sane as I could growing up and the things that I was being subjected to. So that's why as I got older, I wanted to be a light in the world of entertainment, in the world of storytelling, because of how much it truly helped my life. It helped me to stay breathing as I was going through trauma that I wasn't able to fully speak out loud, especially until I got much, much older when things started coming out. So knowing the power of storytelling, knowing the power of how art really can transform and transmute trauma into something positive, I just knew that this would be something where I could take a storybook and be able to embed it hopefully into everyday lives of families, children, educators, you name it. I would love for this book to be there to really help and to be, like I said, something that's non-fear based, that is trauma informed, that is engaging and impactful, where it's just easy to open a book and speak to your kids about these big topics, but in something that is simple as a storybook, as simple and engaging and even fun as Maya's Magic Word.
It's so easy to think that the only way of making change is policy and sort of like the hard sciences that can seem depressing at times, but
Yeah.
there is so much change that can happen through art, through film, through television, through books, through the physical mediums as well of art. Can you share with our listeners one piece of art or media that helped you throughout your healing journey, or maybe at different stages of your healing journey?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. I feel definitely there's been so many good things that have helped me, or I've been able to relate to, I guess, let's say, in some form or fashion. I think, especially growing up, like we didn't have a lot of media that was accurate when it comes to surviving SA or DV and trafficking, things of that nature, grooming. I think that, we're trying to get better at those things, but I think I found more comfort in watching, honestly, women in the industry who had tough lives, who were able to overcome. So Whitney Houston was a big inspiration of mine, following her story, deep diving into her story of what she overcame and what she had to persevere through to become who she was. Dorothy Dandridge is another person, honestly, who had a heartbreaking story, but she really accomplished some beautiful things in spite of the trauma that she was subjected to. Just really paying honor and homage to these great women that I really looked up to growing up. So those pieces of media and just diving into their stories inspired me to be able to keep going and to take my healing a step further, right? Because unfortunately, these women did have traumatic endings to their lives because of trauma. And I guess I see myself as picking up the torch for these strong, beautiful women, that really did provide the world with such grace and beauty in spite of what they were going through, to be able to take that a step further and, live on with their memory inside of me to help other people.
I think that that is beautiful. One of the phrases that really inspired me within your website was that you were talking about transforming survival into systems of freedom. Would
Yes.
you mind telling us more about like what does that mean for you personally and how you do that through the work that Visionary Women Production does?
Yes. So when it comes to Visionary Woman Productions, I started that in college to fulfill a need at my school. And it then quickly transformed into the company that it is today. A social impact, beautiful company I have been able to lead on my own terms in spite of, the regular industry way of doing things. I always wanted to, once again, be a light. So I created this company to be able to create a safe haven, first of all, for artists, because I've been in the industry since 17. I've experienced a lot that we're all hearing about now, in the news every single day, from the modeling industry to the recording industry to the acting industry. I have been through all of it. And I wanted to be able to provide my own safe haven for artists and parents where I'm being able to educate and inspire and empower people with the truth of what the industry can be like, but also understanding that, you can do things on your own terms and you can create that safety, right? Like my whole thing is safety. My whole thing is being able to create a system of safety that actually hopefully can translate into a new industry one day. That's my hope. That's my prayer every day, to be able to let people understand that they can have morals, they can have values, they can stick to them, they can say no, they can look at their contracts and say that this doesn't seem right or feel right to me. They can tell their agents, like what they will do and what they won't do. So that is creating a system of safety for me, is being able to empower people to understand that they have a choice. They have the right relate to. And that's something that I was not taught, growing up in the industry. And it's a big reason why I created Visionary Woman Productions, is to be able to provide that system of safety, to be a set where I am producing projects that are also doing the same thing. People always walk onto my sets and understand that it's, first of all, inclusive, it's diverse, it is chill, it's comfortable. Everyone is handpicked to be there because of their energy and their background and just who they are as a person, to make sure that the day goes well. So my whole thing is creating that system from the creative meeting all the way to pre-production when we're in the editing room, and breathing that life into the projects that I even choose to work on as well.
It's so great to hear you talk about the way that your identity and your experiences have shaped the way that you've become an advocate and CEO and artist and leader of this production company. Because so often when you hear that phrase, hurt people, and it's so important to be able to harness that hurt and turn it into, well, I don't want that hurt to perpetuate.
Yes.
And so hearing that from you is incredible. And I'd love to hear more from you about how you live your values and your morals through your work, because, so much of the advocacy world can feel narrow when you're
Yeah.
talking about the traumas that we've experienced and how to prevent them. But that prevention work starts way before we even start the conversation about the trauma itself. There are so many different ways that we can engage our communities and our workplaces to create safe spaces. So I'd love to hear more about how you got there and how you'd suggest other people to do the same.
Yes. I think so. I guess first off, how I got there was just through my story, through telling my story and getting comfortable with doing so. I started telling a big part of my story over 14 years ago now, regarding just surviving grooming and abuse and a multitude of other things. And being able to speak that out loud really helped me to transition into the leader that I am today, being someone who utilizes my knowledge and expertise and lived experience to be able to go into my company and say, okay, these are the projects that I want to create. These are the people's voices that I want to uplift. And even these are the people that I want to work with. And these are the people that maybe are not as aligned, as a company to work with. I'm very big on just ethical companies and partnerships as much as humanly possible. So, I do research heavily on people before I even say yes to them. I have people come to me all the time who are saying, oh, I would like for you to produce this, or I would like for you to cast this project, or, anything. And, I do my research, and if it's like, if I'm finding questionable things, I'm probably most likely, not going to work with you, because I practice what I preach, right? If there's someone who has a questionable history of assault, I'm not going to want to work with that person. I don't care how much money, they're offering for a project. I stand my ground, especially as a survivor for survivors. That's very important to do. And that's how I live and breathe my life with my company and with what I'm creating, and even also in the advocacy world. There's also sometimes things where you can come up against different biases, different things people may have and not even realize that they do. With a certain ego, I think sometimes that can be filled in the advocacy world, where people have like this savior complex, but they may have, the right heart and mind to help survivors, but still don't actually understand what it's like to be a survivor, to go through the system, to try to live your life, and, also be in my position where I'm actually trying to help other survivors on a national level platform. Um, and just really standing my ground too when it comes to that, and educating people, and, providing more of a perspective that's more well-rounded than maybe where they're coming from with their work. So just really standing my ground and being able to do that. And yeah, that breathes life into everything that I do, every decision that I make with my company, with Maya's Magic Word, and who I even partner with too.
It's so inspiring to hear that, and I also think it's just really important for young people to hear it as well, that you don't have to put up with all the things that we maybe used to think that we had to put up with. My background is law, and even like, when I was in law school and graduated law school and went into the legal profession, like there's just certain comments or attitudes or behaviors that you kind of were told like this is just part of being in this profession. And I'm certain that that is also true with your profession as well, as we can see from the many, many, many headlines every single day. And so first of all, I want to thank you for being a safe space for survivors and young people who want to do this work. I was recently talking with a survivor, and he shared with me, when you're doing this work, however you're doing your advocacy, you need off ramps to take care of yourself, like an off ramp of self-care. So like when you're carrying too much or it feels heavy, like there's somewhere you can go to just take care of yourself. And it seems like your creativity is one of those off ramps for you. And, accessing creativity can feel vulnerable, especially for survivors. And so I'd love to hear like how you stayed connected to your creative voice, but also how you would help, what advice you would give to young people and to survivors to stay connected or reconnect with their creative voice, or find whatever other off ramp there is for them to sort of practice self-care as they're just navigating their careers and the roadblocks and, trying to figure out like where they fit in and how they can use their voice.
Yes. I mean, creativity runs through my bones. I feel like it's always, even when I feel stagnant, I feel there's always been like 100,000 ideas coming out of me, or songs, or dance moves, or something. So I feel the hardest part hasn't been about staying connected to my creativity, but really about just staying connected to myself overall. Because, honestly, like my healing journey has not been linear. Um, I've been through a lot of different things, even up until my early 30s, when it comes to overcoming abuse, and really actually diving deeper into my healing journey of breaking patterns, breaking out of things that I stayed in too long, recognizing those things, and really truly overcoming them. So I think, the biggest thing for me was, not falling into depression all the time, not falling in and out of, suicidal ideation, or, just not falling into just not really wanting to honor my body and honor myself in the best way possible. So I think it was more so like having to fight through that all of these years and staying connected to creativity. But even so, that obviously stems back to just like self overall, right? So it's like, yes, having those off ramps and having those moments where you have to pick yourself up or take yourself back, to be able to regroup with your whole self, whether that be through stretching or deep breathing, humming, singing a song, just grounding yourself in nature, writing, journaling, things like that. Just being able to reconnect in that way. I think the hardest part really sometimes can just be getting motivated to do so when you're still healing through a lot of things. So I think that would be my biggest thing for people navigating that right now, especially if they're a survivor, and they feel like they should be farther along, or things aren't really happening the way they thought they would as an adult, because they're really overcoming much more than the average adult who didn't go through childhood trauma and weren't re-victimized constantly, depending on their situation. If they weren't able to get into therapy, if therapy wasn't accessible to them, or like if their family family didn't believe in therapy. So that's why they just tried to go throughout life and just, push it down and push it down until it could not be pushed down any farther, which was my case. So I think just being able to be honest with yourself is very, very important to be able to stay connected. Whether that means like, hey, I'm depressed and I do not feel like I'm getting the the better end of this deal in life right now because I feel like I'm still having to navigate and heal through trauma. Being able to like be graceful with yourself is the best way to stay connected to yourself, is what I would say. And the best way that you can navigate to your career as well in this industry is giving yourself grace, is being able to understand that you have the free will to make the life that you want. And it's not on anyone else's timeline but yours. And to allow yourself to go with the rhythm and the flow of who you are and what you're trying to become and who you believe you would like to be in this world.
I think that is incredible, and it's certainly something that young people struggle with constantly. This idea that you have to become, that you have to do, that you have to earn, and it is so hard to ask for help and to recognize and to check on with yourself and be like, I am not necessarily feeling as I should have, and I feel that life right now is not dealing me the best hand. And I just feel that if it's hard for us as young adults, it must be even harder for children. And I know that you mentioned Magic's Magic World, and you mentioned um, having trauma-informed ways to learn about this topic, so that if you're a child that is experiencing all of these issues, you have a way of asking for help and the language to do so, and an understanding. So I would love to ask you about the book, how it came to be. How did you know that this was a story that you wanted to tell, and how did you select the activities and the images?
Yes. So I'll show it to you. This is the book. This is the
Oh,
test
bless
copy,
you.
but we're having the prints come out very soon to all of our pre-sale orders, which I'm super excited about. And yeah, so honestly, it came to me this past summer. I was actually at a UN conference and I had just wrapped up the session and I was sitting in the auditorium still, and it really just popped up out of nowhere into my mind. And I just started writing it then and there. Like people were gone out of the room, and I was still there just on my computer, just writing this book. Um, and I knew I wanted something that A would be attainable, easy, and accessible. So I wanted to write a children's rhyming book where it takes them through different scenarios that I either went through or also just are scenarios that we were told growing up, kind of here and there by our parents, maybe by an adult, but it wasn't really it wasn't really embedded. It was kind of just like stranger danger, don't do that, don't do this. But they weren't embedded practices in our everyday lives for most of us. And I spoke at an event not too long ago for the Child Sexual Abuse Prevention Alliance. And I asked a question to the whole room. I asked them, while talking about Maya's magic word, how many people were actually taught about bodily autonomy, consent, actively, going through these practices and tools in their homes. And only 3 people out of 100 raised their hands. And that is why I created this book, to be transparent, to be trauma informed, but also to be engaging in a way where parents are not afraid to talk to their children about these big conversations anymore. It's not a conversation that you just don't have, or maybe if you have it, it's one time at 15 years old when you think they're old enough to kind of understand. At that point, it's too late, right? Because we have the most vulnerable population between 1 and 2 years old, sometimes now infants, which is terrible to think about. So it's just being able to create this book was making a way where it's like, okay, how can I take the elephant out of the room, or acknowledge that it's still there, but make it a way where parents can breathe a little easier in talking to their kids about these things and make it as easy as listening to a song or easy as reading a book, easy as doing an activity, easy as affirmation cards, easy as scenario cards that they can, play with them every night like a game. It's something, once again, they're attaining it and it's becoming embedded into their life daily. And not something that's completely separated or like this big bad, we can't talk about that because I really don't know how to conversation.
I've said this before on the podcast. When I was younger, it was like a lot of that stranger danger talk of like, don't get in the white van, don't take candy from strangers. Like that was the conversation. And my mom, talked to me about a bit of other things as well, but it really focused a lot on that stranger danger, which we just know is statistically unlikely for it to be a stranger, actually. Like, it's
Right.
actually much more likely that you're going to know this person. And I think that parents now I'm seeing want to talk about it more than parents were willing to maybe 10 years ago, but
Mhm.
they're not sure how to. And I think
Yes.
books, as much as they are for kids, I think they're actually like maybe even more so for the parents, right? So the
Yes.
parents can like learn how to have these conversations. Maybe they feel big and scary, but whenever it's boiled down to a children's book, it's like, oh, okay, this is how I can start the conversation. This is how I can introduce those topics. So I'm so glad that you wrote it. I can't wait for it to be out in the world. I can't wait to read it with my kids.
Mhm.
What age group do you sort of imagine it being for? And what groups of children are you hoping that it reaches?
Mhm.
And how do you hope that it'll help parents have those conversations and maybe avoid sort of the common mistakes that well-meaning parents make when
Yes.
trying to have these conversations?
Mhm. So right now, Maya's magic word is for ages 2 through 6. I would love to take that, the next step further. I have like 6 different pillars that I want to actually hit within the next 1 to 5 years. Right now, this is just basically the first step of the system with preschoolers to be able to start it and pilot it because we have the pilot that we're getting ready to test out in select schools. So, being able to start with that first, get the data that we need, and then move forward into every age group because obviously every age group needs to know about bodily consent and, making sure that they're taking care of themselves, recognizing things that are unsafe. High schoolers, even young adults in college, as you guys know too. So, but this is the start of it. And I am hoping to reach as many children and parents as possible. I want this to be fully accessible absolutely everywhere. No matter what community you're in, no matter your background, I want it to be able to be accessible absolutely everywhere in every school and every organization and every church, wherever you have children. I want this book to be, and it should be, it's an easy, really good tool to be able to use. And we're going to have workbooks. We have a whole big activity book too that's going to be going with this as well. And we want this to be, hopefully an embedded practice within preschool curriculum. So that's the goal for this, is to take our pilot and condense it into a policy and legislation proposal where we are saying, hey, it's the time and day and age now that, children should be having safety time in preschools, whether it's reading a book such as Maya's Magic Word and going through certain things that they need to know on the day to day so they can recognize when things are unsafe, even with their own peers. We need to be doing that. It's the time is now. And from the data I've been collecting with so many people who are excited about this program, everyone everyone says it's needed. It's like they would like their kids to be having that time at school because why not? They're learning their numbers, they're learning their ABCs. They should be learning about how to keep themselves safe, how to say no, what that means for them, trusting their intuition when things don't quite feel right with someone. We should be teaching those things as well too. Those are everyday things, not weird side aspects of life. So I am hoping that this encourages parents to be able to have those conversations easily and to also be able to train themselves too to understand that this doesn't have to be scary to talk about. It can actually be easy and empowering. And that's the goal too, is we're trying to build out an actual platform where it's an all-in-one resource. So you'll have the books on there in an interactive style. We're going to do an animated series. We want to create some songs, and then we also want to create content specifically for educators and parents. So being able to also give them information that they need, but once again, keeping it trauma informed, keeping it transparent, not trying to hold their hand too much, but making sure it's like we're just easing, I would say, the inner child in them, because a lot of them are also survivors themselves and don't talk about it. And I've heard the stories all the time of like, I don't feel comfortable about this because I went through it and I don't know how to do this. So I'm going into this whole program of like nurturing even the adult's inner child with this conversation, making them comfortable so they actually can start having it and actually feel empowered themselves to be able to protect their kids.
I love that you start it with preschoolers. I think that people, when they say like, oh yeah, we should have conversations about consent and healthy relationships, they think of high school and college, but really it's like, no, start these conversations so early. And kids get it. I was recently talking to a few preschool educators at a preschool that we work with here in the Pittsburgh area. And she said, like, how can we make sure we're having that there are safe adults within the preschool, like when we're hiring, like what's one of the best ways of making sure that we have, besides the common ways of background checks and, an intensive interview process, but what else? And I said, simply having these conversations, like having books like that on the bookshelf that you open up and you read to the children, or a sign about body safety on the wall, you're sending a message to every single person that comes into that room that this is a priority, that your kids are empowered, and these books help them to be empowered. My daughter is 4, and I feel like I can't wait to read the book to her to help her be even more empowered and have her take it to preschool with her and share these conversations, because I know that by giving her these tools now, I'm making her safer later on. And I also making it more likely that she's going to come to me if something happens, and she's going to know she's going to be believed, she's going to be supported. And, it starts early. So I want to say thank you for starting young, because there's not a lot of books on it. I think I own all of the books on it, and there's not that many. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited to add to my library.
Yes, I'm excited too. And going back to what you said, even as well, I ended up presenting about a 20-page societal restructure plan when it comes to just shaping the future of prevention for child safety. And one of the things was restructuring the hiring system for schools, honestly, even like law firms, courts, pretty much everything, police officers. Really, honestly, I truly believe we need to be having embedded trauma-informed certification and training for absolutely everyone at this point, especially when it comes to youth and children. If you're interacting with youth and children, you should be certified and trauma-informed to do so, in my opinion. It just takes you to another another level of care when it comes to your clients, when it comes to your students, when it comes to just you interacting with any child. I think it's very important now more than ever to go just beyond those background checks and really actually provide that training. But also, too, just even providing, advanced psychological assessments as well of who is around our children. I think that should be something that is absolutely a must, especially today in this day and age where, a lot of districts are kind of pulling back on certain things, when it comes to the requirements to even be a teacher. It really needs to be taken more seriously. And I believe if we did have the right tools in place, such as these trainings and certifications, it would add that next level and layer of protection.
It's amazing to hear you talk about as well the imagining better spaces and safer places for children. I feel like a lot of the time imagination can be seen as frivolous or childlike, but that's the best part about it, I think, is that we can imagine. We can imagine a better world, and we can do things every day to bring that imagination to life. And that's what you're doing. I feel like that's what we're trying to do here. But overall, with your work and your book, what do you hope every child takes away from Maya's journey?
Mm. Yes, I hope they take away that they matter, that their voice matters, that, their body is theirs, that they can speak up. I think for so many of us, who, especially, if you are a survivor, felt like even though our parents were like, "Oh, if someone tries to touch you there, just say something," but it was once again, it was just so quick and, like for especially for me, it was like a quick fly by night, a quick conversation in passing almost, and I didn't feel comfortable speaking up. I didn't feel comfortable using my voice. I froze like many other kids did. And I didn't feel comfortable fully in my body and myself, especially because it started happening so young for me. So I want children to truly, truly be empowered to use their voice no matter what a teacher may say, or someone may try to say that, oh, maybe you're not thinking correctly or something. No, I want them to be empowered fully to understand that they are human and they own their bodies, and we should be training our kids to be that way now. Like they own their bodies, they are in charge of their bodies, and their voices, and they matter. So that's definitely what I want to, put out into the world now, where children are not, collateral, or they need to be, just I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we live in our society right now where people just treat kids like they need to be like, like little soldiers. Like I tell you what to do and you listen to me. But it's like no, like we are co-creating life with our children, and they are human beings, and we should be empowering them with a new movement that really, 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 truly tells them that.
I love that you mentioned kids being referred to as soldiers because, we're all children until we're not. There's, sure, we're children, then teenagers, adolescents, young adults, and then adults, but really at 18, most of us are kind of thrown out into the world with this independence that we're told our whole childhood is not ours. And then we're in a world where we have to find ourselves and who we are, what we stand for outside of our family systems, outside of our friend circles from growing up, outside of our schools. And so much of that ties back to what I at least perceive as a creative spirit. So much of creativity comes from trusting yourself. And as a survivor and as somebody who is trying to be creative, I have a hard time trusting myself and trusting my own creativity. And so the idea that you mentioned of raising children together, that we're all raising each other, in a way, is so impactful to hear, because not only are you helping children be safe and feel empowered, but you're giving them something beyond the baseline of safety. You're giving them a voice, not just to speak up when something's bad, but a voice to speak up when something's good too, and a voice to share their creative visions. Um, I just think that that's such valuable work, and wanted to thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that so much. It's just, yeah, trying to heal the system of intergenerational trauma, essentially, is what I keep telling people through this project and through the many plans that I have for the future to help shift society into a new direction. Because, yeah, it's like so many of us, like you said, had that growing up where it was kind of like, well, you're told to do XYZ and then you're 18 and you're out in college and you're finding yourself essentially. But it's like we should be allowing our children to once again co create their life from the very beginning. They should be allowed to find themselves throughout every single age range, leading until 18. So they come at the age of 18 feeling like, okay, I feel pretty rooted. I feel pretty good about who I am and what I'll accept and what I won't, going into the real world, going into college, wherever they choose to go. And I feel like most of us just didn't have that. We just got told what to do and told to vote a certain way. You know what I'm saying? And then it's like there was no real question about things. There was no real exploration of things for a lot of us. And even when it comes to trauma, a lot of communities did not believe in therapy, such as mine. It was kind of like, no, we don't do therapy. Like, you'll be fine. Like it happened to me. It's all good. Or you go to church, right? And it's like that was a big thing for me too. It's like religion played a huge part in my trauma, to be honest, when it comes to me not healing as quickly as I probably could have, because it was just kind of like God will take care of it. Just give it to God and it'll be fine. And just move forward. That's what I was taught. So obviously that didn't do me very well moving into adulthood. I got abused many more times, headed into college because I didn't recognize certain things, or I was too trusting, or I stayed around too long. I didn't trust my inner knowing of my gut, my intuition with certain people. And that could have been avoided, much earlier on. And I know I'm not the only person. I know so many people have the same story of like if I would have just had the tools and the knowledge for my parents or someone back then, or been able to be guided into even healing the proper way earlier on, so many things could have been avoided. So I'm trying to really nip that in the bud if as much as I can.
You've collaborated with huge brands in the Dove safety campaign, the safety initiative, and you've been internationally recognized. So I would love to hear you talk more about how we can create systemic change. What have you learned about being in these huge spaces, and how we can continue the work and the mission?
Mhm. I mean, definitely what you guys are doing right now is, creating systemic change, just being able to get into schools, to even chat about these things with students, with teachers, educators, and so on. Like that is creating systemic change. Being able to, also just challenge the ones who are not as open, for people to come visit their schools or their communities, and asking why, being curious about what the roadblocks are or the fear is from people being able to come speak empowerment into children, into educators. And that's something that I really want to work on and fully break as well through the Maya's Magic Word Project. I think this should be in every school, every preschool, and I would like to see it there. And I definitely am very dedicated to making sure that it happens. But I know that even talking at the event a couple weeks ago, a lot of people are like, yeah, it's still so hard to get into school sometimes. And, they can just be a little bit too much red tape about certain things. And that's why I created this. And that's why I'm creating more books too, to try to see, how can we get this into schools where, once again, they're not afraid to have it in their curriculum and in their classrooms in a way where it's like, hey, we understand you don't like hearing certain words or, like you don't like saying trafficking just outright or something, to students and such. But, here's a resource where we are talking about that still, but it's in a way where, once again, it's not fear based. It's not, crossing the line of what you feel is red tape. But, it's actually helping, though, at the same time with that transparency as much as possible. So I think that is something that I'm really looking forward to fighting for that initial systemic change, along with, like I said, I would love to do certifications through the Maya's Magic Word program for this project and program where we'll be trauma informed for educators to go through our process to be able to have our initial safety magical toolkit is what we're calling it in every classroom where they are fully well versed in how to teach this to students on a daily basis without us being there, without too much oversight, except for like quarterly things that we're going to be doing, and just being able to feel empowered themselves to create that change themselves, as the educator, as the adult. Systemic change also starts with, touching each parent and each educator and each just anybody who interacts with children themselves to empower them to be able to speak on these things and lead in their own way. So that's what we're trying to do through this project.
I love the phrase a magic toolkit because you give teachers first aid kits. There needs to be some sort of first aid kit for like social emotional learning and issues and traumas that students bring to school or experience at school too. Because teachers do so much. They are tasked with so much and often under-resourced. And so it's really important for school administrations and communities to come together and provide those resources for our educators, which is amazing that you're doing that. As we reach the end of our conversation, I would like to ask you, what would you say or express to your younger self, your younger creative self at the beginning of your journey that's led you to this day? I truly believe that storytelling is essential to creating social change. I would love to go get a PhD in tracking social movements and media because I just am fascinated by it. But all of that in mind, I would love to hear from you what you would guide your younger self. We've got a lot of young people that listen to this podcast. With everything that you've learned, what would you share with your younger self today?
Oh gosh, that's a deep question. Oh my goodness. I would definitely want to share with her that honestly, her voice is powerful and that no one should make her feel afraid of using her voice, afraid of speaking up about what she's experiencing. That harm in any way, shape, or form is unacceptable. And that standing her ground will never go out of style or is out of style, or too radical or, um, too aggressive or whatever, the society here likes to paint us for standing up against what's wrong and standing up for what's right. That knowing that she is truly powerful beyond measure and that no matter what trauma she's been subjected to, that she can still heal through and create change, not just in her life, but others. And being able to transmute her pain is possible to see others prosper.
I have goosebumps. That was beautiful. I feel like I just wanna sit down with my daughter and, like, say all that to her right now, because it's so important to hear over and over again, and even us as adults, to be reminded, that we matter and our stories matter, and we should have people around us who are taking care of us, as we take care of others. So I know with everything going on today, with all of the headlines, the world can feel really heavy. But I'd love to ask you if there's anything that's giving you hope today and sort of as we're existing through everything that's going on and what that is. What is giving you hope for the future?
Yes. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, building this project and program right now has been giving me a lot of hope. It keeps me, my mind intact. It keeps my spirit grounded, with like, no matter what's happening in the world, that, people are out here creating change. You're out here creating change. And, the people that I met at the event a couple weeks ago are all creating change, and being around people who are doing the work regardless of what's happening in the headlines and in the world and what's going on in society, knowing that there are people that are protecting families and, creating safe spaces if they are affected by ICE, or just doing what they can, even when if federal funding is pretty much non-existent right now for their nonprofits, and making it happen still for their clients, who are survivors and, people that are stepping up to the plate to do what they can no matter what. So that really gives me hope every day, is just our local heroes that are just doing incredible work that is often thankless, by our society, not by our clients and survivors and such, but definitely by society, especially right now. And everyone's even questioning the experts who have been doing this work forever about what they're doing and how they're doing it. Yes, the local heroes are the people that are giving me hope and inspiring me every day. And of course, survivors, honestly. I love that there are so many survivors, even when I share my story now, even more so online than I have before in the past few years. Just the many survivors that come out with their stories and they share and they feel comfortable to do so just because I shared mine. It's just that also has been an inspiration to me, just to know that people are feeling more empowered to speak up and tell their story.
And we ask all of our guests at the end of our podcast episodes to complete their own I have the right to statements, what that phrase might mean to you, how you'd like to own it either today, tomorrow, for the next couple of days, weeks, months, years. Um, we'd love to hear what your I have the right to statement is.
I have the right to shape the future.
I love that so, so much.
Oh, I love that too. So, as we close today's conversation, we're holding a lot of gratitude for Ashley-Lauren's courage, her creativity, and her unwavering commitment to building a world where children grow up empowered, protected, and believed. Her work reminds us that prevention doesn't have to come from fear, it can come from language, imagination, creativity, and love.
Storytelling has always been at the heart of change, and today's conversation is a powerful example how art, advocacy, and healing can come together to create something transformative. Whether you're a survivor, a parent, an educator, or an advocate, we really hope this episode with Ashley-Lauren encouraged you to think differently about how we talk with young people and how early empowerment can shape safer futures.
If the episode resonated with you, we invite you to share it, continue the conversation, and support survivor-led work like Ashley-Lauren's. You can learn more about her projects, including Maya's Magic Word, in the show notes.
And if you're looking for ways to bring these conversations into your school or community, I Have the Right To partners with K-12 schools, colleges, and universities to provide trauma-informed programming on consent, healthy relationships, and leadership. You can reach us at takeaction@ihavetheright2.org.
Thank you for being part of the Aspire community, for listening, learning, and showing up for a world where everyone has the right to safety, dignity, and voice. Until next time, keep aspiring toward change, and remember, you have the right to be heard. Thank you so much for listening. Like and subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends about Aspire. Follow us on social media at I Have the Right To. Learn more about workshops and programming available for students, educators, parents, and community members at ihavetheright2.org.